Thank you. A big welcome to everybody who has joined this AGM online, and indeed anyone who is watching a recording of this AGM. It is being held as we come to the end of the 32nd year since the founding of the National Jazz Archive. Some formalities first. I received apologies from our trustees, Professor Tim Wall from Birmingham City University, from Andy Linehan, a trustee who heads the Popular Music Collection at the British Library, from Jane Hunter-Randall, a former trustee and a stalwart volunteer, and also Richard Baker, who's another valued supporter of the archive. As an archive, we're always very mindful of posterity, and at last year's AGM I mentioned it was taking place on the eve of an important general election. This was to try and give it some historic context and to underline how the archive has to navigate its way through all the uncertainty that life throws up. But never in my wildest nightmares did I imagine that a pandemic would impact on the life of everyone in 2021, not least on the archive. So it is a tribute to the resilience and enthusiasm and dedication of all the people involved in the archive that we've not only been able to keep going, but have made important advances during the course of the last year. But we have, of course, also had our own difficult issues to contend with. But before detailing what has been achieved in the archive, I think it is important to pause and reflect for a moment on what a devastating year this has been for so many people, not least in the world of jazz. And we do feel immensely for all the musicians whose livelihoods have been catastrophically affected and whose plans have been stopped in their tracks, not to mention the emotional impact of losing the opportunity to play with others and to play before live audiences. And we remember all the clubs and venues that have suffered and hope sincerely that they will all be able to recover. And we pay tribute to all those artists and others who've lost their lives during the year. There are too many to mention everyone by name. However, one particular friend of the archive who we have lost this year, who we should remember, is John Cummings. Among his many achievements was the founding of the London Jazz Festival. Another particular friend of the archive we lost is Les Tompkins, a great writer on jazz whose legacy includes a remarkable collection of recordings of interviews and music dating back to the early 1960s. We do remember all of those we have lost with great affection and with gratitude. I'll start the review of the year by expressing thanks to two trustees who left the board during the year and welcoming two trustees who have joined. In 2020, Jez Collins retired from the board due to other commitments. We owe an important debt of gratitude to Jez for his part in helping forge the links between the archive and Birmingham City University, which ultimately led to the thriving partnership which we enjoy today. However, we are delighted that we now have on board a new trustee who is based at BCU, Dr. Corey Mwamba. Corey is an improviser and composer. He's the presenter of Freemus, a weekly show on improvised music on Radio 3, and he is on a postdoctoral research fellowship at the Royal Birmingham Conservatoire. The addition of Corey means that we maintain a total of 3 trustees based at Birmingham. You'll hear later from our trustee Pedro, who's the keeper of the archive at Birmingham. The trustee who formerly had responsibility for IT and social media, John Dale, stood down when he became involved in a new project earlier this year. And I take the opportunity to thank John for, among other things, developing our current website and for the vital part he's played in setting our forward-looking course in IT. We're very lucky that one of John's former work colleagues, John Rosie, who introduced the proceedings today, stepped in to take up the reins. This meant more than just a smooth transition, and John hit the ground running, not least in relation to our website and in relation to our social media strategy, of which more later. While speaking of new names, this is a good moment to mention our delight that Val Wilmer, a long-standing friend of the archive, agreed to become a patron during the course of the year. Val, of course, occupies a very special place in jazz, both as a writer and a photographer, and is an important addition to our list of illustrious supporters. I'll now say something about our activities outside the walls of the archive. It is, of course, an important part of our ethos to be outward-looking, and we are much more than just a static collection of great material. The year got off to a flying start. In January, the archive played an important part at the Documenting Jazz conference held at Birmingham City University. Credit goes in particular to our trustee Pedro for his massive efforts in organising this major international event, and to our trustee Dr. Catherine Tackley, who gave a keynote address. The conference attracted delegates from around the globe, including many key academics and enthusiasts. It was heartwarming, just to give one example, to meet a South American delegate who had admired our collections from afar through our website and expressed great pleasure in having the opportunity to actually meet us in person. The archive aims to participate fully in next year's conference, which is due to take place in Edinburgh in June. Fundraising concerts are, of course, normally another important feature of our activities, and these also got off to a flying start, but I will leave it to Mike Rose in a moment to tell you how the year unfolded. We also had big plans to have a marquee at the Love Supreme Jazz Festival in Sussex in the summer. And then, of course, the COVID lockdown struck in March, and so as the weeks went on, any hopes that we could go ahead with any of these plans quickly evaporated. And it also proved necessary to stop all activity at the archive room in Loughton and in Birmingham. However, even the horrible COVID cloud has a silver lining, and it has provided more time to focus on improving many aspects of the archive, and it has propelled us into learning how to work remotely and how we can work as a team using technology. I don't want to steal the thunder from any of the other contributors today, but I will highlight a few examples of what I mean by this silver lining. First of all, the website. There have been massive improvements in appearance and function following a joint effort led by John Rosie. Social media, which you may hate or be daunted by, just not be interested in, but it clearly is essential for any forward-thinking cultural organisation to engage with it, and lockdown has served to really underline this. Again, under John's direction, we now have a carefully developed and implemented social media plan, including an ambassador programme, and I'm sure John will elaborate on this shortly. Work has continued during the year to transform how we catalogue our holdings, and the day when it will be possible to see all holdings down to item level through the website gradually moves closer. Angela, our volunteer organiser, will say a little more shortly on the fantastic work done by our volunteers. And we've had lots of meetings on Zoom, of course. Personal face-to-face engagement is a wonderful thing and one of the joys of life, but there are other considerations. And it was interesting at our last trustees meeting in November, we talked about whether we would want to resume meetings face-to-face when it's safe to do so. We were unanimous in deciding that actually in future we should simply continue meeting on Zoom. It saves a huge amount of time and expense and inconvenience travelling to meetings. By the same token, this AGM is a good demonstration of how things may have changed forever due to COVID. The attendance is far better than in any previous year. We are a national organisation and the technology is proving fantastic in helping us to reach out and engage far beyond our home in Loughton. The archive did reopen its doors to the public and to volunteers in August. I'm delighted that David Nathan is now back at his desk dealing with queries and greeting visitors. This is, of course, subject to strict COVID safety measures, including limited numbers and an appointment system. And I hope to hear from David shortly to talk further about this. I'll now talk about collaborations. The National Jazz Archive is committed to working with any organisation or individual who shares our values and our passion for jazz. There isn't time here to talk about all our collaborations, but there are some that deserve a special mention. One is our partnership with Birmingham City University, which I've already touched on. It's gone from strength to strength this year. As you may know, it is one of the leading centres for jazz study and research in Europe, possibly the world. And I will leave it to Pedro to say a little bit more about our satellite archive in a moment. I should also say something about the Jazz Centre UK, which is based in Southend. The National Jazz Archive was involved in what is now called the Jazz Centre from the outset, and some of our duplicate collections are still held there. Earlier this year, Digby Fairweather, who was of course the founder of the National Jazz Archive and remains one of our esteemed patrons, retired from his role as Chair of Trustees at the Jazz Centre. I'm delighted to say that the new Chair of Trustees came to Loughton in November with one of his fellow trustees, and there was a cordial and constructive meeting with David, Nathan, Mike, Rose and myself, and we all remain very keen to work closely together in the future. Another interesting area of collaboration is films, and it has been gratifying to see that the archive is a go-to place for jazz filmmakers, and I will leave it to David Nathan to tell you more about this. I'll now talk about the future of the archive. There are many reasons to be positive. We come to the end of a dreadful year in reasonable financial shape. There are various exciting projects in the pipeline which it would be premature to discuss at the moment, but will hopefully materialise. And there's much scope for further enhancing our collections and extending our activities. But we are far from complacent, and I will go through some of the issues which continue to preoccupy us. First, there's the question of space. There's simply not enough space to accommodate our expanded collections. Next, there's the question of funding. There's still no one sustainable source which guarantees the future of the collections, and some of the speakers who follow me will elaborate on this and tell you more about what we're doing to tackle it. Next, there's the question of lack of diversity. This applies across the board, including membership of the Board of Trustees and our audiences. The trustees are acutely aware that the archive is still seriously unrepresentative when it comes to women, to non-white people and to younger people. Last but not least, many of you will know that there have been long-standing plans to develop the Loughton Library site, which is our home. And there's one particular question on this which has been raised by a volunteer, Matthew St-Pierre, to which I can give a reasonably positive answer. So by way of background, the current building is relatively old and has high maintenance costs, and the design doesn't make best use of the space available. Pre-COVID, it was used by around 30 different groups, including Citizens Advice and the Town Council. The local authority wheels grind slowly, but eventually, as had been promised, the archive was approached a couple of months ago by the housing team at Essex County Council for our input into their plans for the new building. And there was a meeting in November between archive trustees and the planning, well, a couple of archive trustees and the planning team to discuss their proposals and to give feedback on the initial draft plan. And these are the main points. First of all, a new future-proof building is planned for the site. It's described as future-proof because it aims to be low on maintenance costs with modern green credentials. The new building will occupy the same footprint as the current building. There will be provision on the ground floor for all current users of the building, including provision for exclusive use by the National Jazz Archive. The design of the ground floor will maximise the space available, for example, by dispensing with staircases, and it will have lots of shared space. The upper floors will consist of residential housing with a separate entrance. These are very early days and there's much detail to be filled in. But one key consideration at this early stage is the amount of space that will be provided for use by the National Archive. This is still open to discussion, and needless to say, we are pushing for as much space as possible. There's no rigid timetable for the project. The designs still have to be finalised, planning permission, so on, has to be obtained, and our best guess is that work won't actually start until at least early 2022. I did say that the news is reasonably positive. In fact, we can be hugely positive about two things. One is the absolute commitment by Essex County Council to provide accommodation to the archive in the new building and to showcase the archive as an important community asset. The other is that Essex County Council has committed to seeking suitable temporary accommodation for the archive in the Loughton area, pending the completion of the new building. However, our excitement is slightly tempered by concerns regarding the space allocation, and no one should be in any doubt what a massive upheaval this is going to be. Nevertheless, on balance, the redevelopment remains a fantastic opportunity for the archive. I would like to think that a positive to come out of COVID is hopefully greater appreciation of our cultural capital. Before I wrap up, this is an important time in which to thank everyone who's contributed to the work of the archive. There are many individuals to thank, but I should start by thanking Essex County Council for their fantastic support over so many years. In terms of staff, I start by thanking, first of all, our stalwart, I've already described him as stalwart research archivist, David Nathan, whose part-time position is paid for by Essex County Council. Thanks go to Angela Davies, our volunteer manager, to Helen Walker, our bookkeeper, and to Thomas Kuglin, our IT guru, who provides IT support to our volunteers and has worked steadily over the year on upgrading our cataloguing systems. I should also mention Joe Blyton, our freelance archivist consultant, who's continued to do sterling work during the year, advising us on best practice on tackling our burgeoning collections. Another important part of the NJA family is Scott Nicol of Rabbit Records, who turns record donations into vital funds for the archive, and you'll be hearing from Scott shortly. Thanks also go to the fantastic list of National Jazz Archive patrons who provide invaluable ongoing support as patrons, and also in many cases by contributing fundraising concerts. I turn now to the volunteers who also generously and freely contribute their time and expertise. Volunteers really are the lifeblood of the organisation. It is a fantastic and growing team. We'll hear more about the volunteers later from volunteer organiser Angela, and also from Jenny, who is one of our volunteers. Much thanks also is due to our hardworking board of trustees. It's worth remembering that they too are also volunteers. So, in conclusion, despite this being such a difficult year, the archive is still in robust health. We have adapted well to the challenges thrown up during the year. We're not complacent about the scale of future challenges. Jazz has always proved resilient and life-affirming. Its first flowering was in the immediate aftermath of the so-called war to end all wars, not to mention the Spanish flu epidemic, and it has endured and evolved through 100 years of financial crises, wars and other hardships. The strapline of the archive is working for the past, present and future of jazz, and we will continue doing so through thick and thin. Thank you very much.
Yeah, good evening, everyone, and apologies that you're not seeing me. There's a bit of a fault here, but I will be able to tell you quite a bit of what's been happening. As always, we've had many interesting inquiries, not the least for the help we gave for the documentary films on Ronnie Scott's Club, which was shown on TV recently, and the Billie Holiday film, also released a short while ago. Also, a documentary that fine musician Adrian Cox has done on Sidney Bechet. A lot of work was involved in all of these. I also did an interview in July on BBC Radio Essex about the archive, and a few weeks ago, BBC Radio 4 Extra repeated a programme called The Lost Women of British Jazz, for which both I and the National Jazz Archive received a mention for the considerable help we gave. I would mention that inquiries come from all over, and recently I've dealt with France, Sweden and the USA, as well as the UK. A few specifics I've dealt with this year relate to Cab Calloway's 1934 UK tour, the Trad Fad, Bewley Jazz Festivals, Hatchett's Club, a new film on Billie Holiday, which is coming out in America in March, and it's called The United States versus Billie Holiday. So that's going to be interesting. And also, I believe in the audience is Peter Dawn, and I've helped Peter quite a bit with a wonderful book he's going to be bringing out on the great jazz drummer Phil Seaman. On a lighter note, I had a query recently where a man found a ticket for a concert in March 1954 at the Royal Festival Hall, and he wanted to know who appeared in it, and we were able to provide the information for him. We also get acknowledged in books, over 100 to date, and the latest one was the John Hendricks book by Peter Jones called This Is Bop. And I'm pleased to report, in response to a question from James Rodd, which Paul has already touched on, that the archive is open at the moment, but by appointment only, and we're limited to a maximum of 4 people in the archive at any one time.
I'm just going to say a little bit about the marketing and communications group. and what we've been doing this year. We've organised just one fundraising concert this year, a tribute to Tubby Hayes by the Simon Spilett Quartet in February. This was a great success, both musically and financially, with over £2,400 raised for the archive. Plans for 3 more fundraising concerts were of course shelved. We were going to be enjoying the Darius Brubeck Quartet, a celebration of the centenary of Charlie Parker's birth by Martin Speake and Simon Purcell, and another concert by the John Ongom Big Band. So we hope we will be able to run some of these sometime next year. A completely new and unexpected way of raising funds has developed this year, selling books on jazz that have been donated to the archive. This began at the end of last year when a donation of CDs and books was made by Mick Brocking shortly before his death. Scott Nicol of Rabbit Records took care of the music, and I handled the 750 or so books that Mick had collected over the years. Around 100 of these were not held at Loughton, so they were added to our collection, and then a sale of some of the other books at the Simon Spilett concert in February moved several dozen more books on to new readers. But once the lockdown began, I prepared a sales leaflet to cover some of the other books and sent it out with the newsletter in June. This resulted in more than 50 books being sold and raised about £350. I've since sent out 5 more leaflets and been absolutely amazed and delighted at the response, with each one of these leaflets raising somewhere between £500 and £700. So the total amount raised from these book sales is now nearly £3,000, and more than 350 books have been sold to around 75 customers. And I have to say, I'm delighted to see in the our audience tonight many of our book purchasers. So thank you. Yes, good to see you. Now, several other donations of books have been made to the archive this year, and I would like to thank all the donors. That's Tony Farsky, John Sturgis, Chris Lowe, Graham Langley, Pam and Tony Elliott, and Jill Lintz. Their books have filled gaps in our collection at Loughton, and a great many have been added to our satellite collection at Birmingham City University, which you'll be hearing about later. So thank you to everyone who has bought books this year for your very prompt and generous responses. It's been a great pleasure for me personally to know that so many of these wonderful books are going on to new homes where they will be enjoyed again. And thank you to all those book buyers who also made additional donations to the archive on top of the costs of the books. I still have around 750 books in stock that will be included in the sales leaflets with the newsletter over the next few months. So please look out for them, and I hope you find books that you would like for yourselves.
Yeah, I'll just take a couple of minutes just to give a little update on some of the stuff, what we've seen over the last year. I mean, like a lot of businesses, certainly it's been a very interesting year, and we've had to adapt with the pandemic. Obviously, for what I do, to go and actually see collections and pick them up, we haven't been able to travel around as much for the last few months as what we would have liked to. But what we have noticed is people and donors have been really good working with us. We've managed to utilise the postal service. So I've had a lot of parcel force and other courier companies, so we've still managed to actually get donations coming in. And as Paul touched on earlier, there are some sort of silver linings with this as well. With the revamp of the website, we've now found that people are finding us a lot easier through Google. So if you actually go on Google now and type in selling jazz records or donate jazz records, the NJA Rabbit Records website, I think we come up in the top 3 now on the search engine. So I've noticed as well, with a lot of people being at home, taking the time to clear out the loft or downsize, we're getting a lot more interest coming through the web as well. So it's been a really positive sort of uptake in interest and donations coming through. We're seeing interest from all over the country, not quite as far as David's queries, but we've had things from as far down sort of as Plymouth on the south coast, a lot around obviously the Essex, Kent and London areas, but even way up as well around Manchester. We're seeing a lot Leeds, and I think as far up as Newcastle as well. So people all over the country are able to find the website, and we've been able to take the donations in. And as I say, although it's been a difficult year to date, we just had a nice large collection come in last week. So we're currently at just over £5,000. We've still been able to raise through donations and the sales of CDs and vinyl LPs, and is hoping for next year we should be able to do more if we can, if we have a better 2021.
Everyone. Firstly, I'd just like to say a huge thank you to our volunteers who, despite the various challenges that we've faced this year and various restrictions, have continued to actively support the archive by carrying out much needed projects, either at the archive itself when restrictions were lifted, or setting themselves up at home so that they could actually carry out essential tasks from home. So we're hugely grateful for that commitment and effort. We currently have 11 volunteers of different ages, all have a passion for jazz, but also some want to gain experience of working in a professional archival environment. Their activities enable us to care for the collections, to preserve them, and most importantly, to make them accessible. Recent and current activities include the digitisation of a large photographic collection from jazz photographer Brian Foskett, the accessioning, listing, repackaging and cataloguing of various collections, data conversion of old listings that we've previously provided onto cataloguing, our cataloguing database via new templates that we've designed. There's also been some social media marketing activities, designing publicity material for our fundraising concerts when we've been able to have them, selecting and preparing archival material for exhibitions, transcribing and proofreading interview transcripts, and the editing of content for the NGA website. Volunteering is a rewarding way to support the archive, and this year in particular, it has helped to promote well-being by connecting like-minded individuals who are all working towards the same goal. Our volunteering activities really do make a difference to the archive, and we're always looking for new volunteers. An ideal volunteer would be somebody who could commit a certain number of hours per week. It doesn't have to be too many, half a day would be absolutely fine. We tend to meet at the archive on a Wednesday because we have the archive all day on a Wednesday, but you don't even have to visit the archive because, as I say, if you're able to set yourself up from home and have an IT connection, then some activities can be carried out from home. Ideally, having some familiarity with IT helps, and also being an effective communicator. But what we try to do is match the interests of a volunteer and their skills with the projects that we have available. And we do have a number of projects that could be undertaken. We did receive a specific question in from Clive Evers regarding what we're looking for in volunteers. So hopefully that's answered that, but please do get in touch, and also the website has information on becoming a volunteer for NGA. I'd now like to hand you over to Jenny, one of our key volunteers, who can give you a first-hand account of what it's like to be a volunteer at NGA. Thank you. Over to you, Jenny.
Thank you, Angela, and good evening, everybody. Well, I'm one of the 11 volunteers that does work for the National Jazz Archive. Wednesday is my day. I was asked by Paul Kaufman to consider joining the team back in January 2019 to work on the cataloguing of the Brian Foskett photographic collection. I've been working on that collection with my co-volunteer Jackie Pan, and it's been a bit of a labour of love. We've superb photographer covering all the greats from about 1960 through to 2012, when I guess by that time he was suffering ill health. He bequeathed his entire collection to the archive, which meant that we held copyright, which means that the images that we have been cataloguing, and that takes quite a bit of detective work. Those images can be digitized and uploaded to Heritage Images and marketed globally. And hopefully, as the months and years progress, that work will yield a fair income stream for the archive. I enjoy working very much with the team. We have a good laugh. I'm started at a very low knowledge base, have always enjoyed jazz, but have welcomed the opportunity to learn more and broaden my horizons over the last 2 years of working at the archive. And thanks to everyone who make my Wednesdays so enjoyable. So much so, I moved house recently to North Kent, and I'm still doing the commute in every week. I enjoy it so much, obviously. So yeah, that's a little bit about the archive and volunteering, and anyone who wants to join the team, well, I'm sure you'll be more than welcome.
As Paul said, I'm very much the new boy in terms of the trustees. I joined about 8 months ago, and I would like to reiterate what some of the volunteers and trustees have already said, which is how impressed I've been at the dedication, the passion and the knowledge of our volunteers, which makes the whole involvement with the archive so enjoyable and so worthwhile. What I want to talk about is digital media, and what I mean by digital media is any kind of information that can be broadcast through the use of PC or a mobile screen. So that can be something like Wikipedia, where we get a lot of interest from Europe in particular, or it could be our own website, it could be social media, so Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. It could be the email information like you received about the registration and the joining for this evening. Or it could be the information that Google puts out when you put information into a search engine. But I ought to say something about why it's important to the archive. And as Paul said, it's something that's becoming more and more important to organisations such as ours. What I'd like to talk about is what we've achieved this year and what our plans are for the future. So just starting with the website, as an analogy, you could consider the website really to be our shop front as an organisation. So a visiting user can freely access what Angela's talked about in terms of digitising the information we have, all the material in terms of catalogues or photographs. Our aspiration is to put as much of that as possible freely available onto the internet so that people can get hold of it, and that's done through our website. That is very much a unique and an important resource for us as an organisation, and so that's something that's crucial to us to maintain and progress and develop as we go forward. Very much something we want to grow and improve year on year. Before talking about what we've achieved this year, I do want to reiterate what Paul said about our achievements last year, which were crucial in terms of establishing our digital presence on the internet. And that was the establishment of a single integrated website, which has provided an easy to use connection to our online catalogue. And also importantly for us, we also selected Towns Web Archive as an organisation who are our website partner, and we very much work closely with them in terms of developing the capabilities that we have. So this year we've reviewed the website with a view to providing more of a human face. So to do that, we put on volunteer stories, which we will update as we go through next year, so that people are clear what we do, what the different volunteers enjoy about their work with the archive. And you can find that on the news and events page, where you can also get hold of personal articles that I've also added onto the web page, so you can get a sense of the history as we develop and find it through the work that's done. We've also added some background information to enhance the user experience and hopefully make the website easier for people to use, and we'll keep reviewing that as we go forward to add more and more easier ways of people to find the information that they want. We've also increased interest through more images on the website to make it that little bit more attractive, and we've improved and increased the consistent look and feel of the website pages. Importantly, though, for us, we've also improved the ease of use for mobile users. And just one of the interesting trends that we've seen since last year is that mobile and tablet use has increased from about 30% up to nearly 50% of users this year. So although some of you may just use PCs, it's very important that what we produce is easily accessible for mobile users. We've seen a dramatic increase in the number of users. Typically, during a day, we'll see maybe 100, 150 users accessing our website from all over the world, particularly in the UK, but also US and different parts of Europe, but increasingly more and more different parts of the world. And the actual number of visits to the website has grown something like 2 to 3 times more than it was at this time last year. So considerable growth. Some of that because of the changes due to lockdowns in various countries, but also some because of the increase in terms of recognition of what it is that we produce. Through social media, we've been able to get the story about what we do out into the field a lot more. So during this coming year, what we want to look at is increasing the digitized content, so increasing what we've got as an online catalogue. We want to add more features to help user access to the information we hold and further enjoy the experience of visiting our website. So that's the website. Social media, I'll touch on briefly. I've talked about the website maybe as being our shop front. Well, maybe you can think of social media as perhaps like the flyers that are given out outside of a shop. So through the various posts that we make our audiences aware of the National Jazz Archive, what it is we do, we can share information and we can share our passion about jazz. But I think most importantly, and it's the key is in the word social, is it gives us an opportunity to engage with various people who are interested. And what I love most is when people choose to share their experience and knowledge that's triggered by the various posts that we put out. It might be a memory about a particular concert that somebody saw. It's great to get that information shared. And we've also had some very interesting inquiries from the US and from the UK for family members who are jazz musicians and wanting additional information. So it's a great route into the archive from people who are remote from us. This year, we focused on growing our audience on social media, and we've done that by more regular and high quality posts and themed campaigns. We've engaged more proactively with the audience that we do have, and we've directly followed a number of different related organisations and individuals. The target that I'd set for this year, I thought was a fairly hard target, which was to reach 1,000 followers across each channel. And the channels that we use, social media channels, are Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. But I'm pleased to say we've easily beaten this target. We're now approaching something like 1,200 to 1,300 followers on each of those channels during the last 6 months of the year. So in terms of growth, we've grown our Twitter followers by 10%, Facebook by more than 60%, and I'm pleased to say our Instagram following has increased by more than twice, so more than doubled within the last 6 months. And what's been great is that's seen us attract audiences from all over the world. We've got Europe, North America, South Africa, Southeast Asia, and across, importantly as well, picking up on what Paul said, we've very much improved the demographics of our social media contact. So now very much picking up on Instagram, the younger demographics. So for next year, as you'd expect, we want to continue that growth, and I've set the target as being to reach 2,000 followers across each of our networks by June of next year. And that will be a tough target to meet, but we're certainly going to give that a good push. And that will be enhanced, I'm sure, by new events that we'll have in 2021 that Mike will be talking about later, because what we're desperate to do is share our experiences of some of our fundraising concerts again. And that will give us a great opportunity of having some video clips on our website and on the various social media. So we're excited to keep this upward trend going. And we hope to add more volunteers to our social media team during the year so that we can do more and different things. The wider the number of us that are involved, the more it is that we'll be able to do.
Good evening, everyone. Best part about my slot is you don't have to look at me because I've got some slides. Right, now I'm just going to give you a brief overview of the Archive's finances with a look back and a little bit of a look forward. Now, our financial year, as it says there, runs to the 31st of March. And these figures you can see here are taken from our accounts for last year. And I'm just going to run through a few of the figures, a little bit of explanation. Now, first off, you can see the biggest figure there in income is Essex County Council. Now, I just need to explain this because we don't actually receive that figure in cash. That is the value of the services that we get from the council in terms of occupying the premises at the library, David's salary, and you'll see when we come to expenditure that exactly the same figure is there, but it recognises the resources coming into the archive, and as our biggest donor, we are very grateful to them. You can see the other source of income there in descending order, and for last year, obviously our concerts did very well. They produced a profit of just under £8,000. And you can also see that we were very fortunate to get a very nice legacy last year. And in fact, we've had a legacy in each of the last 3 years. And we are very grateful for those people to remembering us. The record sales Scott's already talked about, and they have been steadily increasing over the last few years. And in fact, we are really, as a strategy, trying to get less reliant on the concerts and build our other income sources. Right, for the current year, our income will look rather different. I think various people have mentioned this. Nick's done a great job with the book sales. And I think for the whole year, we will just about replace the profit from the concerts. So that will be a great contribution to our finances. So we're also getting more organised about donations, and you'll hear more about that soon. And as John has said, the new website is really a major tool in us getting new sources of income. And Scott has already mentioned that he's seen some results of that. Right, so there's the expenditure. And as I said, so the top figure, that's the money from Essex County Council. It just cancels itself out. But so we're recognising that we're getting the money in and we're spending it. Okay, so the next item there is the cost of the new website, which John has referred to. That's obviously a one-off. Then we've got our other IT and website costs, which basically is one of our major costs just to keep us going and communicating in the way we should. You've already met Angela, who is our volunteer manager, and the consultant archivist is Joe Blyton that Paul referred to, and that is, once again, it varies. It's some years we use her more than others, but it's just a question of making sure we're keeping up to date with best practice. The event costs, that is the concerts, the musicians, the venue hire, etc. Room hire, that's where we use the library out of our allocated hours. Essex County Council charge us rent for the rooms. At one time we got them for nothing, but they need the income, so we have to pay for it. And I think the other expenses there are fairly self-explanatory. Now, getting us right up to date, today we have just under £65,000 in the bank, and my cash flow forecast up until the end of the year shows by then we should have just under 60,000 in the bank. Now, I've had a question from Mike Weston about how viable our finances are. Any charity needs to be careful with its money, and we're no exception, because there's always more to do and we could always spend more money. We need a minimum of about £15,000 a year to keep the archive going. So I wouldn't want to see our cash drop below 30,000, so that we've always got, say, a 2-year buffer if things were getting difficult. So we are financially stable at the moment, but we can't relax. We can't take our foot off the pedal. We've got to keep thinking of new ways to generate income, and there is a lot of that going on.
Good evening to everyone, and thank you for joining us. And can I give a special welcome to honoured patron John Altman, who I spotted in the crowd. It's nice to see John out joining us tonight. The fundraising that we're involved with has obviously, for the last number of years, has centred around our fundraising concerts. And as Nick has already referred to, during 2019, we only managed just the one. Seems like a lifetime ago when we had Simon Spillett with us. But fortunately, although we lost those, the 3 planned gigs, I am going to be the bearer of some very positive news. Before I get to that, John's referred to some of our social media activity, and I suspect that there are people amongst us this evening who were the recipients of an email regarding fundraising. I have to warn you that you can expect 2 more before the end of December, but we feel that this is a way of telling people what we're aiming to do, and hopefully they may want to contribute. But I can tell you that as of this evening, total donations from that email exercise have been over £1,000, and any people who are with us tonight who've made those donations, can I thank you very much on behalf of the trustees. So the fundraising concerts, and this is also covers the question posed by Richard Harris. Thank you for your question, Richard. As I'm sure a lot of you are aware, our preferred venue for our concerts, for many, many reasons, is the Loughton Methodist Church. And like all organisations, they've been subject to the restrictions imposed upon them due to the pandemic. However, I've endeavoured to keep in regular contact with their administrator, and I now am able to say that I have received within the past 3 days an email from the administrator on behalf of the Methodist Church Trustees, and I shall read the reply, which is, having discussed your proposal, which was, can we possibly potentially book some slots for 2021. Having discussed this with the church trustees, we are happy to take bookings for 3 Saturdays between September and December 2021. We will need to review these bookings in May 2021 and reserve the right to withdraw the bookings at that point. Now, whilst the offer is not gold-plated, at least I suggest it takes us fairly well forward, because it means that I can now approach various musicians on the understanding, arrange a booking with them on those approximate dates. But of course, the arrangement to the situation at the time of the booking. But what I can go on and tell you is that I'm in regular contact with Kathy Brubeck, Darius's wife, and I've already made that arrangement with Kathy and Darius. So all being well, and with everybody's fingers crossed, we should be welcoming the Darius Brubeck Quartet in 2021. As far as the archive talks and other external events, whilst there has been discussion amongst the trustees, and we have highlighted a number of people that we wish to invite to give us the talk, at the moment, given the circumstances, there's really not much else that we can do. I could also make clear that other sources of fundraising are looked at continuously, but I can tell you that not many funding organisations are desperately interested in archives, and certainly none of them are interested in jazz. But that doesn't stop, we carry on looking.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Pedro Cravinho. As Paul Kaufman mentioned in the beginning, I'm also trustee from the National Jazz Archive. And I would like to take you just a few minutes through a few slides I prepared so that many of you never attended our satellite collection. So I thought this is the best way for you to show. So our satellite collection is located in this building, which is the Parkside building, where we have the Faculty of Arts, Design and Media. And as you can see, the name of the archive is Arts, Design and Media Archive. So we have a reading room. In normal circumstance, we are opening from Monday to Wednesday from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. But unfortunately, given the circumstances, the archive at the moment is closed. There in the archive, we have a reading room. And in the next slide, we're going to see we have a control environment storage room where we have our materials. I'm responsible for all of those collections, And one in particular, I'm very keen, is the National Jazz Archive. So all our collections comprise materials from arts, design, and media. Music is a strong component. As Paul mentioned, this partnership starts even before 2017, but since 2017, and in January 2018, the first step was to sign a memorandum of understanding between both institutions. As you can see, Paul Kaufman signing the document here. And this year, we will formalize the agreement between both institutions. So now we have official partnership, if you want. In terms of the materials we have so far accumulated, we have the foreign language journals, as you can see in acid-free boxes, and also the posters that we received from Lawton were in acid-free plastic sleeves in specific material. We also have some personal collections, what we call it personal collections. In this case, you can see the materials we received from Lawton now are in acid-free boxes, and this is a specific one, Kate and Mike Westbrook collection, but we also have Jan Carr and recently Charles Fox. They are, as soon as we receive those materials, we move to acid-free boxes and folders so that we can preserve them for a long term. The next one, please. The materials can also be accessed online, and because it's the first time we're presenting the satellite collection, I would like to share with you this. So it's possible to search what kind of materials we have. So the main library catalog, and here we have an example. If we do a search for jazz and location ADM archive, you grab a lot of materials. And if you click in one specific one, John, could you please, you see that's what, this is a jazz journal. We see that this is a reference only. This is, this item is part of the National Jazz Archive collection. And also we have kind of a code normally in archives. We have several, how do you say, metadata that allow the user to see exactly what we have. Other ways for us to engage our academic community. Can you, next one, please? It's to bring students to the archive. So as you can see by the hands, all the materials are handled with specific gloves. So none of the materials are allowed. So we don't allow our visitors to handle materials without the proper protection. And another case, we do facsimiles copies, which then are, what do you say, laminated in plastic, and we can take those materials to the classrooms. So we can discuss with the lecturers specific topics, specific, what do you say, themes that we want to address on a specific course or module. We select those materials, we scan the materials, and they provide to the lecturer. So not only we bring students to the classroom, and we also go there. And another way is to prepare some collections and make those materials available on the building. So in this case, it's the main corridor from the Parkside building, but we have also another exhibition already. And the next slide, you can see in the East Side Jazz Club, which is located at the Royal Birmingham Conservatoire. So for the future, given the circumstances or the current one because of COVID, recently we received Graham collection, and I have here the picture to show you that already arrived. I'm very keen now to be able to resume my normal life and start working on this collection. So that in the future, there will be moved to acid-free boxes and folders and make them available as well on our catalog. So for me, that's all. I didn't want to go more than 5 minutes, and thanks for listening.